Using her communication strength. All right, you two can have a seat. So the strength of communication is a wild card strength. So people with communication have a great way to communicate. They either prefer written, verbal, or both. And Georgia, I don't remember what you said. Do you prefer to speak or write, or do you like both?
Speak.
Speak.
I had to pick. Yeah.
How about you, Scott?
Speak. I learned how to become a better writer in law school.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right, so communication. It's the idea of you're typically a good listener. You're able to connect with your audience, whether it's an audience of one or many, and you're able to communicate the right message to the right audience at the right time, right? So again, communication, remember, talking for the sake of talking isn't a strength, but when you're using it and partnering up with those other strengths, it's what are you communicating? To whom? What needs to be done? What issues are you making aware? What direction are you suggesting that they do? With speaking, you're going to work better connecting with your audience by speaking with bullets or highlighted text rather than reading verbatim. Right? It's the idea of being able to wing it and adjust depending on the situation. If you've ever had to kind of give a speech more than once, you just know it's not going to be I'm reading the words and just doing that, right? It's just, you've got the 3 bullets and each presentation is probably slightly different. You see that, Georgia? You, Skylar, do you do public speaking? Yeah. You enjoy it?
Yeah.
And some of us are like, no, thank you, right? Straight to the point. He wants to make sure he gets out on time. Right? All right. So again, very expressive, right? No problem doing that. So my colleague who you'll meet with a strategic plan, right? I always joke and give Scott a microphone and he can just wing it. I can do public speaking, but I'm putting a lot of effort in, making sure I know I read as much as I can, right? So again, we can both, the end result can be good, but one's putting in way more effort. All right, we're gonna get to a couple more strengths that can butt heads. We've got relator and woo, and we talked about woo a little bit before, but we'll talk about it again. So stand up if you have relator in your top strengths. So quite a few. So Tom, who's not here, Emily, Randy, Margaret, Cammie, Eric, and Don. 1, 2, 4, 5. So 6.
I'm not friendly. I'm not caring.
Well, we'll talk about you later, Lori. Don't worry. We'll get there.
Oh, I am really. I don't know.
That's right. You don't like people, Lori.
Oh my God.
That's fair. That's not what that means. But we can talk about that later. All right. Bring that up again later, Lori. I forgot. All right. So relator prefers to connect with people one-on-one or in small group settings. So a relator wants to have a meaningful conversation with somebody. So if you just met me and we talk about the commute or the weather, that's fine. But you're not going to want to talk about that every single time you see me. It's the idea of every single time you see somebody, you want to get to know them more deeply and more deeply, right? Let's talk about your family. Let's talk about why you chose your career. Let's talk about maybe how you ended up here versus living somewhere else, right? That relator wants to be able to connect with you and relate. So with relator, you typically are not going to start a conversation with a stranger. Okay. When you are out at the grocery store, you're probably not going to talk to the person next to you. Now, if the person next to you starts to talk to you, you're going to be nice, right? You acknowledge them, you might continue the conversation, but in your relator brain, you're thinking, I want to end this conversation as quickly as possible. I'm going to be polite, but let them know I don't want it, right? When I'm on a plane, I've got the headphones on, I have this face, right? I don't smile a lot. It's like, and then when somebody talks to me, I'm like, don't you get that I don't want to talk to you? Nothing against you, right, Skylar? But I just...
I missed that cue, sorry.
You did. Every once in a while, I'm stuck next to the person who has woo on a plane. I'm like, oh, man. It's like, I have some work I have to do, right? So understand, again, with a relator, we do care about connection and interaction, but it's more about quality versus quantity, okay? It's to say you're not out there looking for new friends. You have your certain set of friends that you probably had for a very long time. And even the word friend, you might have different definitions of it, right? It's, hey, I just met you. Okay, now we're acquaintances, like we crossed paths a couple times. We're co-workers, right? We know each other. And then eventually there's friends and then there's inner circle, okay? So relators, people probably tend to overshare with you. they tell you something, you're like, I can't believe you just told me that. Okay, don't make the face, okay, interesting. Because you're thinking, I wouldn't tell you that, right? So you're very trustworthy, people feel like they can share with you. But again, typically it's small group. If you're ever looking to have lunch or dinner or something with somebody who has a relator, or excuse me, if you're a relator and you're having lunch with somebody else, you almost have to let them know, hey, it's a relator lunch. I just want to talk to just you. Because maybe they are woo and they invite everybody else, like, hey, the more the merrier. And you're like, I was going to talk to you about something, but I can't do it with everybody else there. So relators that stood up. Does this sound pretty true? Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk about this later. Because a lot of you have a relator, I want you to understand that this can potentially get in the way at times. But peer relator, just understand this one we'll talk about first is it can butt heads with woo. So the woos stand up, high five each other, do some cheerleading. Yeah. You two can have a seat. So woo stands for, again, winning others over. People who have woo are just like, oh, that relator sounds terrible. Like, no, let's talk to everybody. Let's start conversations with strangers. People say, strangers are just friends I haven't met yet. This is going to be great. You're standing next to me. I'm going to talk to you. And apparently, Skylar, you talk to the person next to you on the plane all the time? Absolutely.
What else you can do for the
I have another client who has woo, and we were both at a conference together. And we were talking, and I forgot he had woo, but somehow we were talking about strengths and things, and he goes, oh yeah, I felt so bad, I was so tired. He like took a red eye from the East Coast to the West Coast or whatever, Connecticut, is that right? Anyways, he took an overnighter, and he's like, I felt really bad because I only talked to the person sitting next to me for half the flight. He didn't care. I promise he didn't care. But his woo, he wasn't talking there, right? The relators are like, no, we didn't need to talk to you. Right? So I was explaining to him that they weren't there. Yeah. It wasn't upset. Okay. So anyways, I thought that was a funny one. That always makes me laugh. So woo, it's the idea of you have no problem starting a conversation with that stranger. It's very wide, but not as deep. It's the idea of you typically like to work the room, shake the hands, kiss the babies, right? It's when you were at the gala, and so, all right, I was at the gala, right? And I know I said hi to maybe one or two of you when I was there, but again, as my relator, I'm like, oh, I don't want to bother them. I don't want them to feel like they have to talk to me. So I remember going to you, Eric, and I was like, I'm not going to make him keep talking to me. But I just wanted to say hi to him, okay? And then I'm standing in line for a drink, and then all of a sudden, Skylar turned around. He goes, oh, hi, I'm Skylar. We haven't had a one-on-one yet, but he recognized my name. And I didn't realize he had woo at the time, but then later I was like, that makes sense, right? Yeah. But I'm so glad he did that because I probably wouldn't have initiated the conversation, right? So I really appreciate that he did that. So the woo is going to work the room, right? And I know, Georgia, we were talking too, in your role, maybe outside of LCCA, just going to different events and just having to constantly meet people, right? Okay, so
I'm chuckling because at the gala, I actually looked for Tim Dilloff. I'm like, where is he?
You know what,
I'm like trying to find, and I'm like, are you? He's like, who the hell are you?
Oh, funny.
I found him.
And I actually think you went to him and then I left because I
afraid I was going to talk to you.
I was talking to him and John, right? And then I think you came over, but I didn't know who you were. And then I was like, okay, she wants to talk to him, so I will leave. So, and then I think later I was like, oh, I probably should have introduced myself, but I didn't know. But again, that's just understanding. So woos and relators can butt heads, okay? So as a relator, on the negative, we can look at woos as shallow. You're just out working the room. You're brown nosing. You're just trying to get them to like you and then move on. Maybe buy something from you or be on your side and move on. Right? It can feel fake. The woos, you're gonna look at all the relators and say you're standoffish. You're unapproachable. I have RBF, right? I'm not gonna say what that is, but we all know, right? Like people are like, I'm afraid to come up to you because I think you're gonna yell at me or be really mean. And it's like, this is just the face I was born with. I'm not paying to get it fixed. But right, as a relator, I'm not a big smiler. So again, we can look at each other negatively, but understanding you need both. So I always say, again, energy management, Georgia and Skylar, go out and meet people in the community, connect them to the mission of LCCA or other organizations, everything that you're a part of, and then, hey, connect them to the relators to have those meaningful conversations, and then you get to get energized by meeting more people and doing the same thing. And then the relators are like, yay, I don't have to meet 100 people, I only have to talk to 5 people and go really deep with them. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I remember some of the one-on-ones that I had prior to the gala. Some of you were like, yeah, I'm not totally looking forward to the gala. Like, no offense, like, I love the mission, but yeah, it's gonna be exhausting, right? I'm gonna have to talk to all these people, and that's okay, right? Just know what energizes you, what exhausts you, and try to do more of what energizes you. Questions, comments on this one? All right, the next two that could butt heads with each other are consistency and individualization. So if you have consistency, please stand up. Got Randy, Margaret, Candy, and Lori. All right, so the four of you can have a seat. The four of you are the rule followers. You say things like, what does the handbook say? Do you have it memorized?
Page 22.
Yeah, section 3, article, yeah, absolutely. So consistency, you want fairness for everybody. This used to be called the strength of fairness. So it's the idea that I want to treat every single person as the human that they are and treat them the same. That we have a clear set of rules, that if work starts at 7 o'clock and you're supposed to be in your room ready to go at 7 o'clock and you show up 5 minutes late, well, what does the handbook say that we should do? How should we do that? After 3 strikes, what happens? And Cammy knows. That's where consistency comes in. To say we want everybody to know what the rules are and everybody should be expected to follow that. And you want to share any stories, or is that just...
That's just the way my brain works.
Yeah. So I will say, I have the strength of consistency. My sister has children, and when they were young, they were all within like 5 years of each other at Christmas, at birthdays, and all of that. Like in my head, as an aunt, having the strength of consistency, I wanted to try to give them, same dollar amount of gifts. I didn't want them to be like, oh, I didn't get this and that, I didn't, right? I just didn't want to deal with that. But that's how I was raised as well. My mother would track Christmas presents to the penny. So if she bought my sister and I Christmas presents and we each got 10 gifts and she spent 50 on me and 60 on my sister, well, she had to go to the store, buy one more gift for each of us, something really cheap for her and something $10 for me, so it would balance out, right? My sister works in a school. She has consistency. It's what does the handbook say, right? What is, legally for the state, what are they requiring? She struggled during COVID because consistency, the rules changed. And the rules were different depending on state, local, all the, CDC, all that, right? Very frustrating. It's like, I don't even know what's right. I don't know what to do. So it's the idea of wanting to have that all written and documented so we have the information once and we can follow it. Make sense? Too much? All right, so consistency can butt heads with individualization. So, John, it's all on you. And as I described all that, you're like, oh my goodness, right? No thanks.
No, actually.
No? Okay.
I think I appreciate rules, and there's reasons to have them. I think I look at it as what I don't like it if people use rules and policies as excuses for not being able to get something done.
Okay.
Or going after a big goal.
Okay.
Like, set the big goal and go after it. Like, why not?
Okay.
But no, policy and rules, like, there's reasons for them.
Okay. So individualization is known as the strengths finder strength. So people who have individualization will say, well, yeah, we have those rules, but should they apply to every single person, right? Everybody is unique. Everybody might need to be treated slightly different. And maybe in the classroom, when I think of your role, Emily, right? It's the idea of, so we come in to instruct the whole class, but the individualization is going to say some of the students are going to need something a little bit differently, right? So individualization says I want to treat everybody as unique human being that they are, and I realize that maybe the rules don't make sense. Maybe they're outdated or they're not as clear for this particular thing. Sometimes we joke that individualization are the rule breakers, that it's like, well, it's kind of outdated or, it's not truly applicable, right? So that's where they can butt heads, right? Consistency wants to have the same, follow the rules no matter what. So individualization might, like you said, is, well, I don't want it to be an excuse. Maybe we need to revisit some of those rules and modify them. And that's where it really becomes powerful. So consistency, we need that handbook. Individualization says, let's make sure we keep updating that. Or if we come across a situation that we've never come across before, it's not in the handbook, let's add it to the handbook so we know in the future that we're treating future situations the same. Questions, comments on those two? All right, that is not a typo. The next one, belief and belief can butt heads. So most of you get to stand up now for belief. So I've got Tom, Skylar, Randy, Margaret, Lori, Georgia, Ellen, and John. Nice. A lot of belief in this room. Okay, you can have a seat. So belief is the only strength that is unique to every single one of you. Belief says that you yourself are very value driven, but they're your values, and everybody's values are different. So I find it interesting when I was looking at the information, right? All the board members stood up, right? Your belief, there's something about your belief that connects you to LCCA that said, I want to be a part of this organization, because hopefully there's that alignment for the two, for you and the organization. Now we joke that, and I think I said this in the one-on-ones that I had, that if you have beliefs, sometimes you might be called stubborn, right? But let's spin that positively to say you are passionate about your values and your beliefs. And if somebody wants you to do something against your values, you're gonna say, you know what? I don't feel comfortable doing that. So some of the values are obvious, right? Following the rules, right? Not lying, cheating, stealing, murder, all of that. That makes sense. But the beliefs can get more nuanced than that. It can be, things like finding the joy in every moment, wanting to serve, trust, integrity, that your word means something, that if you say you're going to do it, you follow through and you do it. So the reason that this can butt heads is that your belief is important, but it's different than somebody else's. So I'm bringing this up to say when we do the strategic plan, they're going to bring this up again. We want us to make sure we're fully aligned with this. I think of a Venn diagram, right? You're each a circle. We want that overlap for all of us to be at least small enough where we're all aligned missionally as we're moving forward with LCCA, as we're putting together that strategic plan. Because if not, here's the thing. If anything LCCA does if it goes against your beliefs, you're not going to do it. You're not going to touch it. You might leave. You might say, well, you know what, you can do that, but I'm not going to be a part of that. So understand, belief. You will start things and you will finish things if they fall in your values. If they don't fall in your values, you're not going to touch it. There are people who have belief that have quit a job without having another one, or something happened in a relationship or at work where it happened and you're like, you know what, I need out because this just goes against everything that I believe in. It can make you physically ill. So we encourage people to write what we call a life value statement. So those of you who have belief, and even if you only have it in your top 8, you might want to think about what are your core values? Who are you? And how does that dictate the relationships, the organizations you're a part of? And making sure that you can articulate that. So as a team, as you're putting together that strategic plan, you're all very clear on saying, how can we all be aligned so we're all going in the same direction? Because if all of us aren't aligned and we're all pulling at the organization in different directions, what happens?
Progress.
Yeah. Don't make progress, the organization falls apart.
I have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
I think relative to the desired lifespan of LCCA, we at this table are temporary. Maybe others for shorter or longer periods than not. But what limitations does what you're explaining put on the strategic plan for an institution if we're aligning these specific beliefs of the people around this table for this project? And is it in any way limiting or does it in any way put institution at a disadvantage if we're only looking at our personal
Good question.
positions?
I would say in order to make sure it is not limiting is you do not change the direction based on your own beliefs. The first question you want to ask is to make sure that your beliefs align with the mission, vision, values of LCCA. So that's where we're going to start when we do the strategic planning. Again, if you already have your, and I know you do, you have your mission, vision, values already defined. I would hope, and I would assume, I know you shouldn't assume, but that all of you who are on the board read through that before making that commitment to be a part of the board. So it's just making sure that there is still that commitment there to say, yeah, I'm truly aligned. If you're not aligned, you might say, you know what, I don't know if I should be on the board. I don't know if I'm agreeing with that. So making sure, I would say, start with the organization and then you're attracting the right people to help with that. Good question. Other questions on that? All right. Next, discipline and adaptability can butt heads. So please stand up if you have the strength of discipline. Any top strengths? right, Emily, Cammie, and Ellen. All right, you three can have a seat. People who have discipline, you like order, structure, and routine. You may be intense. Some people say, oh, they're kind of wound tight. They like it their way or the wrong way. Oh no. But understand, this is how you operate best. The three of you that stood up are going to operate best when you can live within your routine. So maybe it's getting up in the morning and having a typical morning routine, an evening routine, liking lunch at a certain time, just having your schedule planned out as much as possible and trying to follow that. So that's how you operate best. And let's be real, how often does our day go exactly as we have planned? We adapt, but we can be really frustrated. Like, oh my goodness, that meeting got canceled, so-and-so didn't show up, and this is just frustrating. But it's understanding that that's how you operate. Right? So it's knowing that, all right, let's make sure that in your roles, you can have that discipline, you can have that structure, and people aren't always trying to overstep it because then you can easily be frustrated. All right, so there's laughter over here, so we got to address that. So Eric and Margaret, I don't know, you guys are laughing.
No, I was waving.
Yeah. You see that?
She does. She has, on a personal note, like, I know Emily puts her kids to bed at the exact same time every night, right? They have pretty clear structure just in how she facilitates things, and she's super organized. And so, like, she gets here and has her kids with her. She has a plan for them to keep them occupied until, like, the typical day starts where they can run out to the playground, and they just follow that routine day in and day out, and it works perfectly for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the opposite of that, we're going to come back to that. The opposite is adaptability. So adaptability, whenever you're ready, stand up. Georgia and Eric. All right. Thank you, too. You can have a seat. So adaptability says, I don't want the structure. I don't want the routine. I want to just go with the flow. I'm going to maybe have my list of things that I want to have done today or by the end of the week, but I'm not going to structure it out of what I'm doing at 9, then 10, then 11. No, you're just going to adapt, and you realize that you have to flex. The day doesn't go how you have planned, so you're just going to easily, very quickly be able to adapt depending on what's going on. So adaptability operates best when having unscheduled time. It's the idea of, all right, my morning's blocked off, I know I'm going to have to do stuff, but I don't know what, and I don't know what I'm going to feel like doing. So maybe you have some writing you have to do, maybe you have some research you have to do, maybe you have some phone calls you have to make, and you're like, okay, I have those 3 things on my list, but I don't know, we'll see. Monday morning, do I feel like talking to people? Do I feel like reading? And then you have to adapt, and you still want to make sure you're getting things done by the deadline, but it's not very rigid. It's just, again, going with the flow. My nephew has adaptability number 1, and it's just like, you ask him to wash the dishes, and okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then, 10 minutes later, he's still sitting in the same spot, right? And, he's sometimes going to get up and wash those dishes, but you really don't know when, by the end of the day, by next week, when you need the cold plate, I don't know. It just, we'll kind of flex as needed. So adaptability.
Until he has a wife that tells him
He is married now, so we'll kind of see, I got to follow up on that to see how that's all going. So adaptability. So Eric, you see adaptability for yourself? Yeah.
Some of it's I feel it's out of necessity in the sense that sometimes when you schedule things too tightly, it all goes wonky anyway, right? So you're going to have to adapt at some point. I think that's some of it. And then the idea of, I also like to think of adaptability in my case as opportunistic, right? Sometimes you have time to do things and you use that opportunity. If it wasn't scheduled in, then maybe you would overlook that or do it at another time or something like that. So.
Do you do that for vacations as well?
My wife plans our vacations. I just adapt to whatever she says.
All right.
But I'm not uncomfortable with. I'm also not uncomfortable with a lack of predictability. Mm-hmm. So I do think things are apt to change sometimes, and I don't enjoy the stress of expecting that something was going to happen exactly the way that I thought it was going to happen, and then so I think adaptability has developed because just dealing with change. I think change is inevitable, and I think adaptability is important in dealing with constant change.
absolutely. So these two can butt heads. So discipline, you can look at adaptability, like you're lazy, like are you gonna do anything? You just, you don't have it structured, when's it gonna get done? Adaptability, you can look at discipline like you're low and tight, it's your way or the wrong way, it can be really frustrating, but we need both. So I love working with schools because I'll have some people with discipline to say, you need discipline, right? You need to have your schedule, you need to follow it. Then I'll also work with people with adaptability who say, you need adaptability because you have to adjust that, the day isn't going to go how you planned. So again, the idea of need, both are really good, really valuable. So have this structure and understand that we have to adapt depending on what's going to happen. And so a discipline, when our day goes exactly the opposite of what we have planned and we're frustrated and we keep dwelling on it, we go to the people with adaptability and they're like, are you alive? Yeah. Are you hurt? No. Okay, then it's fine. You're like, okay, fine, you're right. Understanding that. And then adaptability, if you're feeling like, all right, I need some help with some structure, I'll get that sometimes with some teachers who have adaptability. They're going to go to the people with discipline to say, what are you doing in your classroom? Maybe I can take something from you that can be helpful for my group. So again, that's the idea of that partnering up. All right, positivity. Stand up if you have the strength of positivity in your top 8. Only one. There we go. All right, we need your positivity. All right, I jokingly say that positivity is number 40 out of 34 for me. It's really not. But like I said, I get a lot of people thinking I'm always a very negative person just because I don't smile a lot. It hurts my jaw, it really does, and I don't want to have more like dental work done. But I'm not a smiler, okay? But I do know that it's like in the middle, like 20s or so for me. So Georgia, when I'm having a bad day, right, the discipline, right, my day does not go how I planned, and I'm all down and negative, Georgia, cheer me up. Or I come to you and you can tell that I'm upset or, just having a bad day, and you're like, let's go do something fun, or let's have fun. Let's go out for happy hour, whatever's fun, right? Let's share a joke. Let's lighten the mood, right? People who have positivity during COVID. My one of my colleagues, he had positivity, so he's like, we're doing virtual happy hours every Friday afternoon. We're getting together, we're getting on Zoom, and we're gonna talk. The rest of us were like, we have to, but we did it, right? But that was the positivity to say, let's look on the bright side of things. Doesn't mean Georgia doesn't have bad days. It just means she does have bad days, she bounces back really quickly, and she's going to be there to try to help people see the good in everything, be the optimist by nature. Do you see that for yourself, Georgia?
Sometimes.
Sometimes?
I think I'm more in the negative category, but I can see this.
How long have you been on the board?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, so everybody probably doesn't know you well enough to be able to jump in on some of that. Okay.
Definitely not.
All right.
You're positive. I'm a cynic, though.
Well, so am I, but
yeah.
but that doesn't mean you're not positive.
I don't like people.
I like people.
I don't.
Understand that, again, positivity doesn't mean that you're going to be happy and bright side every single day, right? But if somebody next to you is having a bad day, you're probably like immediately goes to I want to cheer them up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I just need to listen to them, give them a hug, help them see the bright side of things. And say, yeah, it can be crappy right now, but it is going to get better at some point in the future. If you are in a culture, and this is where I think is what you're talking about, is and I'm not saying it's everybody in this room. When you say a cynic, I realize that you're talking about other things, but let's say everybody here complained every single time you saw them, you're gonna be like, oh my goodness, I don't have the energy for this group right now because they're just gonna be so negative, right? So what you're talking about is past experience with other organizations where that's where you become cynical because you're like, I just know it's just gonna be, let's focus on the negative all the time, and I don't have the energy, I don't wanna be around that if I don't always have to. Is that maybe true? Yeah, okay. All right. Restorative. Please stand up if you have the strength of restorative. Oh, it's just Tom. Okay. So let's talk about Tom.
Yeah.
Restorative is the fix it and fix it now strength. In fact, why didn't we fix it already? Right? If that door handle is loose and every time you open it, it jiggles. Right? Restorative is going to say, why are we just living with that? Go get a screwdriver, tighten it, and we're done. Right? So restorative can go one of 3 ways. People who have restorative may want to fix things or processes, may want to fix or help people, or a combination of both. So understand that restorative is going to say, I see problems, I identify them, and I want to immediately solve them. How can I do that, right? Two people aren't getting along, restorative is gonna say, how can I help bring them together? Help them see that maybe they're closer on an idea than further away. The speed here is fast. And if Tom comes in with his restorative and says, this is what we have to do, this is a great way to fix it, and everybody's like, no, Tom. He's gonna be like, oh, come on, I'm telling you what we need to do to solve it, let's do it. Especially if it's an easy fix. So they enjoy investigating and they are unintimidated by those solutions. So a lot of times with restorative, people might be drawn to fixing the idea of things. Maybe they're into welding or woodworking, maybe they do that for a job or as a hobby, or they might be a counselor or a psychiatrist working with people to help them through things. All right, arranger, stand up, quite a few arrangers here. So Tom is an arranger, we've got Skylar, Emily, Lori, Georgia, and Ellen.
Ranger?
Stand up.
Oh, yeah.
All right, 5 of you can have a seat. So arranger is another problem-solving strength. So what we say with arrangers tend to be pilers.
I know.
They tend to be pilers because they love variety. A good day for you is not what we're doing today. 4 hours of this meeting, and you're like, no offense, Tiffany, but sitting still for 4 hours kind of rough. I'm all right with that. So a good day for you is variety, to go from one thing to the next, back to the first thing, then to something else, right? It can kind of look like you're the chicken with the head cut off, but those are the days that you love. You're like, wow, that just day went really fast. I got all that stuff done. I was helping to solve problems. Arrangers, as you solve one problem, you say, how can I fix this somewhere else? So in the teaching world, maybe you're trying to connect with this one child on something that they're just not grasping, and you're trying to be creative, different thing after different thing, and then finally something sticks. And your arranger's going to say, I need to try that with some of the other kids, right? It's the idea of, the arranger says, you learn through one thing what a solution is, and you want to apply it somewhere else. You have a conversation with somebody, you learn something from them, you say, how can this be helpful with something else that I'm working on? So really great at problem solving. Again, you're kind of orchestrating a lot of different things, a lot of moving parts. Maybe you're rearranging schedules, right? I can only imagine whoever puts the class schedules together, the teachers and all that, this big puzzle of moving parts, right? That's an arranger. The reason that arrangers are typically pilers is because you have everything filed in an organized way that works for you. It may not always look organized to other people. So maybe you've got the piles on your desk like this, and then you're not in that day, and somebody goes, hey, can you tell me where this pile is? And you're like, it's on the left side, maybe 3 or 4 down, and you know where it is. In Georgia, you're like, yes, absolutely. So you have to train people, if they go to your desk when you're not there, it's like, don't randomly put something on a pile, because I'm never going to know it's there. And don't randomly move my stuff and think you're doing me a favor and putting it all in one pile, because you just ruined my next few days to try to refigure that out. But arrangers, very resourceful in figuring out what those solutions are. Do you see that, the arrangers? Liking variety.
Mm-hmm.
I know I talked to some of you said you weren't necessarily pilers. Ellen, I think you said you're not a piler, right?
I am at work.
You're at work, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So you can kind of see how that shows up.
Yep.
And I think I said I'm a piler, but highly organized piler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Binders.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And you can absolutely be organized. I know some people with arranger, they'll say, during the day my work space gets messy, but at the end of the day I want to organize it, file it, whatever it might be, so it doesn't kind of frustrate you because it's all over the place. All right. Intellection.
Did you hear that?
They're still in that meeting? It's like detention.
Yeah, we were bad.
Help us.
I get that a lot. All right. If you have strength of
They're staring.
intellection, please stand up. Randy, Cammie, and Eric. All right, the 3 of you have intellection. Wonderful. You may have a seat. Intellection is the 24/7 processing strength. People who have intellection in meetings, sometimes you might look disengaged, and people are like, hey, you paying attention? You're like, oh, I'm paying attention to what you're saying, how you're moving. I'm paying attention to how people are reacting, right? Sometimes in a meeting, you might look like this, and you're zoning out, and I've done that before. I was working with my sister's team, and I called her out, and she put me in my place, right? She didn't look engaged, but she absolutely was. But that's what you do with sisters and siblings, right? Mm-hmm. Intellection, it's the idea that you're very cognitive, you're constantly processing things. I worked with a firefighter who was saying that she was processing something that happened 7 years ago. that can happen with intellection. It's the idea of you're reliving that conversation with somebody to say, why is that the case? If you're working with a student, you're working with somebody else and they're struggling with something, you're like, why is that? And you just want to keep processing that to try to get to the root issue. This one is slower in nature to say, I want to figure this out. I worked with a gentleman who had intellection, and for him, it's the idea of you get energy by being alone, right? So again, being in this group right now, you're like, I need to get home to my office and just kind of be by myself. And so for him, he would actually once a year he would plan a trip out to the cabin, so he could be by himself. He could read a couple of books. He could think about reflect on the year and then think about the future. Well, he started dating a woman, and so when I was checking in with him, he's like, yeah, interesting story. I was talking to my girlfriend at the time, and I was talking about this trip, and she goes, well, what about me? And he goes, what about you? And she's like, am I not going? And he goes, well, no, you're not. And she's like, are you breaking up with me? And he's like, no, this is my thing. This is how I go to recharge. It's something I've always done. I still like you, but this is still my thing. We can do another trip, but that's not what this is. So the intellection is saying, again, especially if you're married, it's to the spouse, I still love you, but I need my alone time to recharge. Let me do that. And with that, deep reflection, getting to the root issue, right? Processing certain things with your life, your work, whatever that might be. So those of you with intellection, you see that for yourself, Eric?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So I wanted to bring this up, and so I told you when you're talking about your ideation, you're like, well, I don't always just share ideas right away, right? You kind of wait for other people to say it. This is likely why, because your intellection is still processing a lot. So your intellection probably leads out more than your ideation. You have all these ideas in your head, but your intellection is saying, I want to process them before sharing them with other people.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, wonderful. And Cammie, you have intellection as well?
Mm-hmm.
Processing a lot with your
Oh, yeah.
current job and next job?
Yes, I'm always, always thinking about it.
Yeah.
Wake up in the middle of the night and can't fall back to sleep because you can't turn your brain off because you're thinking about things. I do think about things that happened a long time ago, or I think about scenarios in my head of what could happen in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a lot of crazy things going on.
And how about you, Ryan?
Oh, for sure. I remember my mom telling me when I was like 10, I can always see the wheels turning.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I hope as we've gone through all these, you're seeing these in a positive way. You're seeing how they could get in the way, but to say, how can I partner up with other people as we move forward? So just wanted to mention that. But that's all the strengths for this team. So the next question is, what's missing? But before I get into that, anybody have any questions, anything you want to ask, bring up based on everything we talked about? Oh, that's right, Lori, not liking people. Now,
I like people.
as a-
Just don't want to spend time with them.
So every once in a while, we say that as a joke. We see that as a joke. Is people are like, yeah, that kind of checks out. Like, I mean, I like people, but I don't like a lot of people, right? But I also will get some people who say, but I do like people. Why is that? So it doesn't mean that you don't like people, but you might respond and say, well, maybe it does depend. But it just means that you don't have interpersonal in your top 8. It just means that you lead with the other strengths. You can absolutely come across as interpersonal by working with other people based on your strengths, right? So when we look at Lori's strengths, right, she has belief. Her belief could be, hey, I want to help serve people. I want to make a difference. I want to make sure that this organization is profitable and we're managing our funds well. So when she goes to have a conversation with Margaret or somebody else, and she's using her belief strength and using her subject matter expertise, it comes across as interpersonal. Hey, Margaret, I care. You might want to be aware of this, right? It can come across as interpersonal when you're using your other strengths. Does that make sense? And I could do that for all of your strengths, Lori, but I just figured I'd talk about that. All right. So, what's missing? 1, 2, 3, 4 strengths. So, self-assurance, deliberative, includer, and empathy. Self-assurance. So, people who have self-assurance, we joke that they think they're never wrong, but in all seriousness, they rarely are. They're very confident that what they were doing is the right thing at the right time. The true strength here is it can breed their own confidence in others. Does anybody in this room feel like they have a higher fear of failure? Yeah. Some of us can say we want to do something, but fear gets in the way of I don't want to mess up. I don't want people to see me messing up, right? There's video cameras everywhere now, right? Well, you know what? If you have that fear, to find that person in your life that has this self-assurance, so you can go to them and say, I want to do this. And then they might say one of two things. They might say, you're ready. Like, you were born ready. Go do it. Or, you know what, that's good that I know that's your goal now. Let's work on A, B, and C. So in 6 months, you're ready for it, right? I'm going to give you that confidence and support to be able to get that done. Deliberative. People who have deliberative like as much information as possible. So if you remember John and Skylar with their activator and command, 1% of the information is all they need. Deliberative is like, whoa, 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 can we have 99%? And then maybe a little bit more, right? People with deliberative take great care in decision making. So it's the idea of, if it's not an emergency, can we collect more research before we move forward so we know we're going in the right direction? So deliberative sees risks, sees potholes, see things that can go wrong. This is one of my strengths, and this is why people joke that I don't have positivity, because I'm always saying this is everything that could go wrong, okay? But I just want you to be aware of it. You can still make the decision, but I'm going to throw out those ideas, those questions, the things to think about. And it becomes problem solving because we've collected so much information, we have enough data to give us the right solution. Make sense? All right. Empathy. No empathy in this room. No empathy, zero empathy, all right. Now, I want to point out that the way this assessment is defined, empathy says you can feel the emotions around you. So you likely know at least one person in your life, whether it's here at home, who has empathy. They might seem very emotional, right? They're happy, they're crying. If you're happy, they're happy. If you're crying, they're crying, right? They can literally feel your emotions. They can walk into the room. Let's say you had a bad day. You know, you were something terrible happened, but you don't want to tell anybody. The person with empathy might go to Emily, how are you doing? I'm fine. No, really, how are you doing? I'm fine. No, really, how are you? Like, oh my goodness, I can't lie to you, right? People with empathy can just sense that there's something wrong, or they can sense that they missed a conflict in the room. So they can sense these emotions. So if you know somebody in your life who has empathy, understand they need time to decompress every day. Let go of some of those emotions, those difficult things. But not having empathy might be somebody we want to make sure we're tapping into as we're moving forward, that we're not going forward and we're not thinking about the emotions that the staff and the staff and the teachers might experience based on some of our decisions, right? How are they going to feel based on that? And then lastly, includer. Includer is the warmest of the interpersonal strengths. People who have includer see the wallflowers, see the people who are left out, to say, hey, if we do this in a strategic plan, who are we leaving out? Or who's going to feel left out? Who's going to feel disengaged? How can we make sure that they feel like they're a part of the team? So this one might be something to consider as well as you're putting together that strategic plan to say, you know, is there somebody that has an includer that isn't a part of this team that you can check in with to say, do you feel like by us doing this, are we accidentally excluding somebody? That makes sense for you? Do you see how that could be helpful? So again, includer and empathy can butt heads with command wanting to just get going, right? So command, activate, let's get going as much as possible with this information. And empathy saying, well, I understand we want to do that. We still have tasks to do, but how are the emotions? Are we going to lose some staff members that they don't agree with that, or they're frustrated that they weren't asked? Some things like that to consider.
Does that also maybe butt heads with like achiever?
Good, yeah. Yeah, achiever wants to get it done, and empathy's like, yeah, but do you understand you're upsetting somebody in the process? Absolutely. Yeah, that one's a little bit of a rare combination, achiever and empathy. Good question. Other questions? All right. How about let's take a 5 or so minute break, and we'll hit the home stretch.
Dun, 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 dun.